we are ready to begin. And I'm thrilled to be here to introduce you to Dr. Femi Kolapo. And I should mention before I introduce Dr. Kolapo that I'm Alison Worka. I'm the Acting Associate Dean of Research for the College of Social and Applied Human Sciences. I'll learn that before I have to stop acting, I hope. And I'm, as I mentioned, excited to introduce you to Dr. Femi Kolapo, who's an Associate Professor in the Department of History. And Dr. Kolapo's research focuses on a variety of topics, including war and society in pre-colonial sub-Saharan Africa, as well as Christian missionary and West African communities before colonization, as well as slavery, the slave trades, and post-abolition in the African context, so a wide range of topics. Dr. Kolapo recently authored a book in 2012 that was published by Edwin Mellon Press, and the book is called The Journal of Church Missionary Agent James Thomas in Mid-19th Century Nigeria. Currently, Dr. Kolapo is working on the political paradoxes of Nigeria's Pentecostalism, which is what he's going to be speaking to us about today. His talk is going to take about 40-45 minutes. And then we'll invite questions or comments from you as audience members, and you're invited to stay for reception after the talk. And I should mention that Dr. Kolapo is also a ping pong enthusiast, so there might be time for questions and answers on that topic as well. So thank you very much, and let's welcome our speaker.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. My topic is off here, but it's the paradox of Nigeria's Pentecostal movement. So I'm interested in some of the contradictions that I think I've observed reading the literature, and having been a participant in the movement for quite a while, some time. I also have a personal experience that I can bring into the study. So that gives me an added incentive in my research of the movement, the ability to bring my self-awareness and subjectivity into the topic. But like I said, it's a reinterpretation I'm engaged in. This is not yet based on any field study as such. I'm an historian, but with this topic, I'll be dabbling into quite a number of fields: sociology, anthropology, and maybe even political science. And some of the things I'll be talking about are actually in parts political science, because here I'm interested in the political, the acclaimed political influence, impact of the Pentecostal movement in the countries of the South, Nigeria being one of them. So I feel that there are some changes that the literature has not paid enough attention to, which have been occurring to the Pentecostal movement in Nigeria. Elsewhere also, as a matter of fact, it's more the literature I read about the movement elsewhere that stimulates me into looking into the literature on the Pentecostal movement in Nigeria, which then alerts me to the fact that not much has been done with respect to trying to question this popular perspective, to bring nuance into the perspective that the Pentecostal movement has this fantastic political, liberating, modernist political influence on the societies where it has taken root. There's a lot of truth to it, but I think there's so much euphoria about it that it looks like a lot is being lost sight of. So as a general background to my talk, it's that we can situate this in a broad popular topic, which is referred to as the desecularization theme. Some people call it the re-sacralization theme. Prior to to now, in 60s and 50s and 60s. It's after World War II up until the 1960s. The social sciences, and very much everybody in the developed world believed that religion was on the way out, and that religion basically has no place, has no role to play in the public realm. It's supposed to be an enemy to modernity, and that in the confrontation between religion, and science, and knowledge, secular knowledge, that religion has to give way. But there has been an overturning of that idea, and now almost everybody, at least since 9/11, even those who did not quickly come to a realization of the change, since 9/11, everybody seems to have become much more cognizant of the fact that religion is still very, very important. However you define religion, it's still very important in the world. Peter Berger, there was this man who used to be an important sociologist who advocated, he was one of those authors who was very emphatic about the fact that religion was on its way out. He kind of converted, had a recantation, and came out with a book in 1990, which he virtually said, now everything he had said, he was recounting, and he now believes that religion is so very important. So it's in that context that I begin to look at the issue of Pentecostalism, because it goes on to include the fact that much of the increasing influence and increasing role of religion and increasing cognizance that people are giving to religion in the world has to do with the part that Pentecostalism has played. It is supposed to be the fastest going sector of Christianity, and it's kind of leading in the re-sacralization, re-enchantment of those who are in sociology, the re-enchantment of the world. And much of this growth in Pentecostalism has been attributed to countries of the South, countries, Latin America, African countries, and Asia, as opposed to the northern countries. So, in the literature, there's a lot that has been attributed to Pentecostalism. Generally speaking, people have tended to agree, most of the researchers have tended to agree that it has a modernizing effect on the societies where it has developed. And few people kind of questions that. So they seem to believe that in the practice and its doctrines and its institutions, the very structure of the movement are all considered to be amenable and kind of facilitative of democracy in general. So that kind of view has been brought on the examination of Pentecostal movements in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America, and that's what I begin to do with respect to Nigeria. So there are claims, similar claims like you have for Pentecostal movement everywhere, modernizing and liberalizing, influences that teach self-assertion, that allows for more participation for all class of people. That was including gender. It's more inclusive of gender, more inclusive of the youth, allows for a democratic playing field, the very nature of the doctrines, that everybody could receive the Holy Spirit into themselves and become priests. Kind of erases the barrier between the clergy and the pew. So all of these are beliefs, ideas about the very nature of Pentecostalism has made researchers to come to a kind of general conclusion that this is a development that is actually positive. So, contrary to the view that religion is opposed to modernism, and that religion was on its way out because it could not in any way coexist with modernism. So you have this view now that actually Pentecostalism is not anti-modern, and that in many respects, you find now that in places where it has taken root, it seems to have been a tool, or at least provided some values and ethics that are very conducive to the development of a democracy. Now, there has been a lot of research done on Pentecostalism in Latin America, much more, I reckon, and much more than for Africa. But increasingly also, you have more people coming in. Like I'm just beginning also to look into Pentecostalism, moving from mainline churches. But when I check the literature, my reading of reviews indicate that when you begin to talk about the political impact of the Pentecostal movement, you have a range. You could talk about the high end of that kind of impact. In which case we'll be talking about concrete political views, concrete ideas, and concrete platform developed on the basis of Pentecostal theology to influence politics, maybe to engage, actually to go beyond simply voting and encouraging membership to vote, to engage practically in trying to influence policies. Now, the literature indicates that you have more of these in Latin America. The movement seems to have begun around the same time, but in Latin America you have more of this, more high-end, effective participation and influence, you would say, of Pentecostalism in the political sphere, the public political sphere of Latin America, much more than you have, in at least so far in the studies than you have for Africa. There are claims, by this man Antonio Castillo, and he actually provided a list in which he claimed that there are at least 30 political parties in Latin America that will be branded as Pentecostal parties, parties that were founded, and that were essentially sustained, by Pentecostal organizations. And so, in other words, these organizations that believe, that they had a role to play in politics, and as a result of that, they decided that there was a need for them to engage in the creation of, an institution, or at least indirectly supporting an institution that they felt, they agree with their ideas. So you have quite a lot of that much of that in Latin America. But beyond that, you have different kind of explanations as to how the Pentecostal movement helps to foster a democracy. In the first instance, at the very loose structure of these organizations. They are independent, fiercely autonomous, generally fissiparous. You have to keep breaking and keep, because everybody is equal. Everybody can, because of the idea, that everybody is equal before God and before the Holy Spirit. There is an emphasis, pneumatic emphasis on, the easy access that the believer, the adherent, the Pentecostal adherent, has to the Holy Spirit. And so with that kind of intimate relationship with the Holy Spirit, then it becomes possible, for people to assert their independence and their autonomy and, start organizations. So there's a lot of liberty. It's a little bit anti-elitist. People have, for example, indicated that in Latin America, as opposed to the Catholic Church, it is much more democratic. They are broken into several thousands, not decentralized, loosely organized, participatory. They allow women to lead. They allow women to to preach, and so, generally speaking, they are much more liberating, in their views regarding social relationships. So you have this kind of idea, so that even in their structure, people have been able to read into them the possibilities for promotion of democracies. And so it helps a little bit to think that where you have these churches developing, that they will rather help to develop libertarian and free society. Now, these 3 points are important for me in my exploration today, because I find out that most of the dynamism that has been attributed to the movement is actually based on these three ideas. The idea of rupture, and that is that the Pentecostal adherents, conversion to Pentecostalism involves a moment of rupture, a moment of, in some instances, ecstatic experience. But generally speaking, that involves very drastic break between the past, in a discursive way and in a narrative way, between the past and the moment of conversion. And so it's a concept that sociologists and anthropologists have examined, and what they say is that it's so powerful because it allows the Pentecostal adherents that ability to reinvent themselves. You could recreate yourself, you could completely forget about the past, you could embark on something new. So it's counter-traditional or counter-tradition. It's able to subvert the past, or at least reinterpret the past in a way that makes for progress, in a way that is suitable for progress. So the point about rupture, therefore, is very important to those people who have argued that Pentecostalism promotes modernity. Because the idea is that at the point of rupture, it simply implies that the past is completely forgotten, and there is this facing forward towards a modern life. Then you have an emphasis on the Holy Spirit. The emphasis is a new man. Now it's also a liberating element to the Pentecostal tradition. People have attributed the fierce individuality that develops among the membership and within the group to this idea, that God is accessible. God is, unlike other interpretations of the Bible, the Pentecostals believe that God is there with you. He's ready to take care of every little thing. He's there now, he's there tomorrow. He's concerned about your well-being, concerned about whether you are hungry or not, concerned about whether you are healthy or not, concerned about your poverty. And so in that situation, it allows for self-expression. It allows for development of hope. That there's somebody who can help. So there has been a lot of emphasis on that too. Now there are other ways that this is also important with respect to modernity, and that is to claim that the focus on the Holy Spirit creates free agents, people who again see themselves as equal with any other person, see themselves as created by God like any other person, and also develop some positive efforts that could, for example, encourage charity work and things like that. Then you have the issue of the technique of self. This is, I guess, Foucauldian idea, of another way just to say, that members of the Pentecostal movement, people who have converted to Pentecostalism, generally because of the doctrine, because of the beliefs and the teachings, tend to re-examine, like we talk about reinvention. So there's this idea, that they are self-aware of their body, in relationship to their surrounding, in relationship to the other. They practice the technique of the governance of self, better conduct, better family relationship, better social relationship. The idea, that the Pentecostal person is not just an ordinary person, but part of the divine, that can make a difference in the world. So all of these ideas, are very important for those who look at the movement, as embodying features, that can easily be woven together with a democratic program, project. And this cut across the board, everywhere where the Pentecostal movement has taken root. Of course, here and there are those who disagree in some respect with some of these interpretations. But by and large, you have a majority view. So every one of these positive attributes of Pentecostalism has been applied to Nigeria's Pentecostal movement. But when it comes to the political influence of the Pentecostal movement in Nigeria, what has not happened, is the kind of experience described for Latin America. That what I consider to be that structured position regarding politics. So, like I said here, excepting for one Pentecostal pastor who used to be an artist, a musician. He floated a political party and contested as the president of the party, for the presidential position. Otherwise, there hasn't been any structure, any case of structural engagement with national politics by the Pentecostal movement. It has, as a body, or in terms of church members within it. In the last election, also, we had a Pentecostal pastor, a lawyer turned pastor, who contested as a vice president to one of the contestants, to a Muslim contestants. Other than that, you don't have that high-level involvement of the Pentecostal movement in the direct way of engaging with structures and institutions that deal specifically with politics. And I'll be talking about what they did. But all the other ideas, the idea, for example, that the Pentecostal church, because of the fact that they are all spread out, and they kind of represent a civil society, or at least fulfilling the role of civil society, as autonomous associational groups that are able to create their own social space, create their own economic space, and therefore at least able to remove aspects of national life from tyranny of the state. So yeah, this is very logical, at least in terms of theory and thinking, that this applies to Nigeria. I wouldn't disagree with that. The other point, of course, is that because of the increasing numbers, the increasing popularity of the Pentecostal faith in Nigeria and in the southern countries, you have these phenomena increase in its population. So obviously, politicians are aware of this. Its significance to them is not lost. Even if the Pentecostal organizations and the membership do not appreciate their own power, politicians do. They know that where you have this kind of organization and where they are so easily mobilized by their leading charismatic pastors and leadership, if you are able to tap into them, it might be to your advantage. So in that respect, obviously they have political significance, but that is kind of passive. That's in my view, it's not proactive. It's simply that you can be worked upon by an external power. It's not something you are doing proactively. So I agree to diversify the political terrain in terms of constituting discrete social bodies, discrete organizations of society, with which other non-religious even political groups will have to share space. I agree with that, absolutely. Now, there are more serious claims that I've come across like these ones. People who actually believe that the doctrines and the teachings, and the arrangement within Pentecostal circle in Nigeria is actually an alternative way, of wielding power. The idea is that, and a particular author said this, that you have the Pentecostal organizations, by the way they govern themselves, kind of subverting or at least challenging the state, with an alternative vision of what should be done or what is possible. I personally don't find that proactive enough. I don't think that in a multi-religious context, and in a context in which you have specific institutions, that are non-religious, devoted to struggling for power, that this is particularly effective. You have a second claim by another author, that Pentecostalism in Nigeria is a political force. In general, that is agreeable with me. But it says that it uses conversion to generate and to claim an redemptive vision of citizenship, where the moral government of the self is linked to power to influence the conduct of others. This is considered particularly effective because of the religious language and imagery that is used, a language that the poor and oppressed are alike to. Again, I find this a little problematic because it's too diffuse. I guess an important point I need to raise is that those who have made the argument for the political influence of the Pentecostal movement in Nigeria tend to engage with Foucauldian ideas of power. So their concept of power is kind of broad, spread out, from the bottom up. I appreciate some of the usefulness of that view of power, but in the Nigerian context, I doubt if it's very useful. I doubt if actually you could apply that concept to all situations everywhere, and have the same effect. And I think the way Nigeria is organized, you still have something tangible that can be called power that people struggle over. And even if associational groups have power that they wield, I guess the relationship that they link them with other people are structured in such a way that some people have the thicker head of power than the others. So all these kind of views, I think, again, I find them that they fit the trend. But I believe that one has to be much more nuanced than this, and that's what I want to do. So what has happened so far with the Pentecostal movement in Nigeria? They have become increasingly important to politicians. The Pentecostals have been able to deploy, according to them and according to those who believe that they have effects on the nation, they have been able to deploy technique of the body to use conversion and to try to create a discourse, and a universe that uses religious language to challenge corruption and lack of accountability and inefficiency. Like I said, all of these I find not very effective. Now, the most important foray of the Pentecostal movement in Nigeria into politics, making use of social structures, and political structures, that engage with theory of politics, and engage formally with politics, has been in the struggle against the Muslims, whom the general Christian population, you have Christian Association of Nigeria, and the Pentecostal organization also has their own movement. They call it Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria. They are a member of CAN. So this struggle and mobilization to counter what is considered to be the bias of succeeding governments of Nigeria in favor of Muslim was carried out by the CAN body, Christian Association of Nigeria. So even this most important, significant element of political participation was not carried out simply by virtue of the fact that these people are Pentecostals. All Christians did that in Nigeria. In fact, mainland churches pioneered it. They have much more structured relationship with the state. The Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, the Methodist Church, they all participated. So I don't see it as something that particularly set the Pentecostal organizations apart in Nigeria as being effective in the way they have engaged with politics. But some of the most important problems I have with the movement so far, in terms of their being able to contribute to changing policies and affecting policies in progressive ways. I mean, I know issue of progress and issue of goals. These are things that one has to describe and analyze. But I think the problem that I find most distracting is that of lack of political theology. Compare, for example, to the civil rights movement in the US. They had a political program that was based, on their reading of scriptures, but was completely structured. They have goals. And so it's not something that is haphazard. You have liberation theology, when it was in its peak, in association, of course, with knowledge from social sciences. Now, Pentecostal organizations don't have this, and it's not just in Nigeria. Even in Brazil, where you have perhaps the most effective, the largest group of Pentecostals, and where they have a political party. Even in Australia has a very powerful Pentecostal party too. I don't know how well they're doing now. Now, one of the problems associated with them has been kind of I don't know whether you call it inexperience, but generally speaking, they tend not to develop a political theology, that is able to concretely engage, the non-religious structures, that are set up in the societies, to deal with issues of power relationship. I guess it has to do in part, with the various doctrinal tendencies within the movement. And the idea of the technique of the self, trying to make the members of the organization into super citizens, into ethical citizens, moral citizens, and then to hope, that by doing that, over a generation of, or 2 generations, you have a better society. I think it's, again, very simplistic, particularly for Nigeria, for anywhere, but even for Nigeria, where you have a multi-religious situation. Even if we assume that, the organization is able to do that, to make more and more people into Pentecostals. That does not imply, that the Muslims and non-Pentecostals will simply sit down and wait until you are able to replace all the political appointments and you are able to come to enforce, your moral position on the society. And as a generational kind of plan, I think it doesn't work because people in power have power, they have resources, they have connections, and most of the time you find them regenerating themselves, their class. They put their children there. So even if you have growth, and you have had tremendous growth in the Pentecostal movement in Nigeria, if going by the size, and the rate of conversion, and many people have said that. I mean, so religious, but yeah, so many problems, so many corruption, this and that. But that is because, conversion itself, the sheer increase in the number of Pentecostal members do not translate, to a transformation of the political society. It's not just 1 + 1 = 1. It's much more involved. There has to be some issue of structure, issue of changes in institutions that will link the Pentecostal movements, that has a specific political program with the society, and that is not present right now. The other thing I noticed from the readings I've done is that there is a change in the doctrinal emphasis. In the 60s and 70s in Nigeria, again, this is a global phenomenon with the Pentecostal movement. There was emphasis on holiness. As of that time, the emphasis was much more directed to the self, redemption of the self, righteousness, particularly with God. People criticize religion then as being otherworldly. The focus is more on eschatology. Jesus is coming soon, prepare to go. So the focus is not so much on what is happening around. The idea was that you have to get ready, be righteous and pure, and be ready to go when Jesus comes. But since then, elsewhere, but here in Nigeria, it has happened, and I think people have not taken that into notice, into consideration. That we've had increasing stress on some additional elements, in this case of health, wealth, and blessing. Again, of course, taken from the Bible and related to the issue of pneuma. Now, in the process of the change, the literature also has indicated that there is a very subtle change to the social constituency, from poor, uneducated people, from rural and suburban people. You have a change over to middle class and urban youth, and increasingly corporate professionals are constituting important segments, particularly of the bigger sections of the Pentecostal church. Now those and the real big members of the movement together, there's about 10 of them, are estimated to have more than 60% of Nigeria's Pentecostal population. So in that process of change, of class, of social status, now, and change in doctrine. Now what has happened is that you actually have very gradual shift, in the positions. So much so that the focus was much on achievement and participation, inclusion in the status quo, whether you are talking about the economy or at least in trying to climb upward. Because there is an association of success, association of class mobility, association of any promotion, even the movement from rural to urban center. All of this could be associated with success and God's blessing in Pentecostal thinking and argumentation. Because of that, you find out that subverting the status quo does not come automatically, to this group that begin to constitute the membership of the church. They are much more concerned with making success, of their lives in such a way that it's not particularly critical of the status quo. Now, there are some recent research that I came across that began to question the concept of rupture. Now, I did mention the fact that rupture is very important. I know in the determination of the modernists, quality to the Pentecostal movement. And so, if you begin to question that concept of rupture, and if it's no longer what it was supposed to be, then it implies that we need to then reassess, our view of the potentialities within the Pentecostal movement. Now, the idea of the radical break, of rupture and conversion, some anthropologists have discovered, is too totalizing. In the first place, as a concept, it does not take cognizance of the fact, that the Pentecostal adherent, has an engagement that is ongoing, with his or her experience with the conversion process. So what was thought to be a very sudden break and sharp break from or with the past turned out, for some people that it's not actually a sharp break. And so in that sense, you find out that it's not in all cases, that Pentecostal adherents have to completely forget the past. In many instances, you have a reinvention, a reinterpretation, a readoption of the past, an inclusion of the past into the present. The whole idea, of the Pentecostal movement, allowing for people to break from their kin, break from their traditional moorings, break from associations that are not progressive. Those ideas were overstretched. And the new attention and research, by anthropologists and sociologists, that deal on a longitudinal basis, with lives, of members of Pentecostal church in Nigeria, in other places that are read in Ghana, in Zambia, Papua New Guinea, and other places, indicate that you might have a few people, of course. There are some people that have this Pauline. Paul in the Bible had that dramatic encounter that changed everything from being a killer to being a super preacher. But it's not the case for everybody. And then you have cases where people actually take time, people study it before they eventually engage with the process of conversion. And some people do not experience that drastic conversion until very, very late. And some people have no drastic conversion process at all. They simply, begin to attend the church, begin to participate as a member in the movement because they believe in some certain aspect of the movement. So, for example, the changes in class, in the social base, and then the changes in the doctrine implies that a new constituency, new reasons, to associate with the movement have multiplied. And so in that case, it's not every case of conversion that involves this cataclysmic, and the ecstatic experience, and experiences where everything changes all of a sudden, and there is total break with the past, with relatives, with previous life, and continuation with the modern. So in that respect, I found out that this again has not been looked at properly in Nigeria. There's more a sense in which people begin to realign with the past, readjust with the past, and even adopt traditional, what you would consider to be traditional tropes in their lives. This is a book it's not an article, sorry, not a book. Now, there is an interesting research that the lady did, trying to show, because people have associated Pentecostalism, of course, with general gender equality, the fact that it allows women, for example, to participate in leadership role, then it's kind of, in its doctrine and practices, subverts and undercut patriarchy in some respect, for example, by dealing with alcoholism, dealing with gambling, and trying to ensure that reasons why men abuse their wives are eradicated within the church, technique of the self, and teachings that encourage women to be self-assertive, and to make progress, all of this in the church. Now, she went back to look at churches, in this case, not just at the general level, but over a period of time. And what she discovered was that, in actual fact, it's more complex than that. She finds out that in the practice and some of the rituals and in some of the doctrinal positions, you have patriarchy sustained, in one hand, and on the other hand, you have patriarchy undercut. So it's not just one way, it's not completely one way the way things have been put. So you have a situation where this lady looked in Zimbabwe and found out that when it comes to domestic relations, that Pentecostal churches are particularly very conservative. And there we actually looked at, because they try to, including the women, accept, this creation of an identity of the female that tallies, of course, with the Bible at home. But away from home, in the workplace, they're supposed to be completely modern, they're supposed to be completely individualistic, they're supposed to be self-assertive. And so you have that kind of schism that she identifies. And I thought, yeah, that is neat, that is kind of very nuanced. And I think we need to bring that to bear on assertions that the Pentecostal movement, in Nigeria does all of this. Yeah, I've done more than 45 minutes already. Okay, let me rush this and move to some other things. Now, there are two important points, that I need to make about my questioning of the Pentecostal potential for change in Nigeria. Now, in Nigeria, one of them is this, that again, it's global in nature, but specific to Nigeria in this case. Now, you have what I consider to be the development of a third public. If you are familiar with Peter Eke, he talks about the two publics in Africa or in Nigeria. And this idea of the civic public and then you have primordial public. Now, I found out that with the Pentecostal movement in Nigeria, that there is a third public. This third public is within the movement itself. And within this third public, you have a discourse, of course, religious lingo is employed. You have discussion, of course, about corruption and about the idea of instituting righteousness in the country. Now, this third public is constituted by tremendous network, of different branches, of the particularly mega churches, because they are increasing in huge numbers. So you have some of the biggest churches in Nigeria now have representation in more than 50 countries, like the RCCG, Redeemed Church of God. You have, they are essentially not just only religious, they have corporate structures. They are engaged, again, because of the doctrine, they are engaged proactively in all kinds of business activities. They are economically savvy. They use the media very powerfully. And so they have been able to create what we would call an empire, with structures, well laid out structures. As a matter of fact, in many cases, perhaps much more efficient than what you have in the Nigerian state. And so in that sense, there is a sense within these bodies, and again, they are transnational, they are global. So now, I believe that structure has come to constitute itself into some autonomous space within which Pentecostals feel happy, to operate. And what it does is it detracts from their actually going out to engage with the state, with the second public. One, because in the first instance, they consider themselves to be better in all respects than the state. They have universities that are some of the best in the country. And they have schools, they have banks, they have cities, huge cities where they are located in. And then, their leadership is able to compete, with the politicians. Actually, the politicians seek them out, they meet with them. And so in that sense, we find out that it seems to me, that, and also from practical experience, and people always say, that it's better, for example, to be a pastor. It has more worth than being a governor. So, in other words, you have tendencies in these development, these changes occurring within the Pentecostal movement that are not necessarily helping towards being directly engaged with politics. Maybe one other one will be there are changes in the structures of this organization themselves. Let me show you something here. This is one of the churches here. Now, branches in Nigeria and South Africa and London, Canada, US. The business interests include newspapers in South Africa, in Nigeria, magazines. We have a TV network, the first Christian network to broadcast. You can access it here in Canada. We listen to it actually. You have this, one of the journals, one of the magazines sells 2 million copies every month. Now, and this is not the biggest, this is not the wealthiest, this is not the one that has the most ramified structure. You have about 10 of them like that. Now, the implication of this, is that you have a huge army of workers. You have a rebuilding of structures, of bureaucratic structure developing that transcends the religious. In other words, business is, you have clearly business here, economy is here. But of course, moving with our religion. So there's a new bureaucratization. Pentecostal churches are known to be fistiparous, they are always divided and small. But in Nigeria, a few big churches have gone against the trend. You have small churches joining them. You have concentration of power, centralization, development of bureaucratic structures that goes beyond Nigeria, cutting across countries everywhere. And so in that sense, you find out that hierarchy is developing, while the doctrine, goes against hierarchy, it's anti-elitist. But in the process of, the economic success and bureaucratic, enlargement that is occurring, you have new structures coming up that involves hierarchy, that involves pecking order, and there is a need to be able to look into that and see how that goes, with the whole totalizing idea, that everything is democratic, or at least tends towards a democratic nature in these organizations. Sorry, I'm out of time, but that is the trend, of the exploration I'm doing. I have a number of things like that. There's somebody else who has looked into the disparity in the wealth between the leaders and the members of this church, and begin to talk about recasting of client-patron relationship. In other words, it casts back to the pre-modern. But I don't think I wouldn't think that is right. I think in most cases, these are highly modern. They are outward-looking organizations, in many respects. But what that client-patron relationship, that disparity in wealth, what it allows for, is the constitutional construction of the third public that I talk about. It is able to raise a few members of these bodies very, very high. So high, that they are actually considered to be much more superior than the presidents, the presidents or governors, And so in that respect, politics is not a thing for them, and even for the membership, really, and they're supposed to come to them to receive, instructions. So let me just end there. I'll give you a few images. This is this is the president of the Christian Association of Nigeria. Incidentally, it was a gift. This is a jet. He was given a jet. There was a lot of furor about that. And he said, what's the noise all about? He's big enough and okay, owning a jet. And this is supposed to be the biggest church in Africa, and perhaps only Young Cho's church is said to be bigger than this. This is a 500,000 seater church in Lagos. Now, it is huge. It is big. There are schools, very, very good schools. So they're able to, they make money. There's very business savvy. This is, the ideology, the ideas, the doctrines allows for and encourages all of this. So now when you put all of this together, you find out you're talking about empires. Of course, religion, it started as a religious organization, but the movement encompasses other aspects of life. But the thing about it is that it kind of separates itself from the political realm, the public political realm of the nation. You know, it considers that all of them now are bigger, almost bigger than the country. You know, in terms of the ramified structures they have, in terms of the prestige of their leaders, at least with the membership, in terms of the resources, you know, they can generate capital resources, human resources. You know, and many of these they have campgrounds where you have meetings held every month, 500,000 people, and so companies rush to advertise, rush to sponsor them. And so you have millions, you know, going through the system. So in other words, you are having a system that is exploding. The diversity and varieties of interest involved in all of this is so big that it begins to minimize national politics. And in that sense, I think it's kind of moving them away from actively engaging in reconstructive engagement with the state. Sorry, so let me just stop there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kolapo, for that wonderful portrayal and illustration of the power of religion in the Nigerian context. I want to open it up to questions from the audience.
Okay, Femi,
yes.
What about Islam and as a fourth public, or as how does it relate to? Or is it part of the third public? Is all religion in this third public category? How does it fit? And the examples I would use would be when the current central bank governor of Nigeria was appointed in 2009. We were heading to Cameroon, and we were following This Day, and it was a very large political campaign in the page of This Day. It was a daily Nigerian newspaper against this northerner questioning his economics credentials, his quote-unquote Islamic degree. Was that origin, do you have any idea if that's related to the church whatsoever, or this third public? Or because there does seem to be some political discourse in between these two groups. So they just kind of didn't really appear here. And I know that you're talking about Pentecostalism, but I'd like to hear about, are Islamic groups countervailing the power of the Pentecostal movement in some ways?
Absolutely. It's some of the things I wasn't able to touch. Now, Islam has always, been forced to engage with politics. I mean, it has, no separate sphere that is called politics. It's concerned with power right from the start. So they don't consider, I mean, the way Islam is organized in Nigeria, I mean, it's, and maybe in most places in Africa, the idea is that there's no division. So you simply want to ensure, that you are able to get the power of the state on your side, or to get members of the Muslim organization into place. But germane to my point here is that one of the reasons why the whole idea of the technique of the body as a mechanism to influence politics in Nigeria will not work is simply because you have, it's not a mono-faith country. You have Islam, in this country. So if all Christians became Pentecostals, it doesn't change much. Where you still have a huge percentage of Muslims, who have their agenda, who are actually better structured in terms of engaging with the politics in the country. So it's part of what I consider to be I don't know whether to call it unrealistic way to conceive of the working of politics, to insist that conversion and praying and alone is enough not to change things. No, I don't think so. So yeah, Muslims are very important in that. In the ability of the Pentecostals to do anything.
I have a question about, you're saying that the original kind of doctrine of Pentecostalism is empowering for women as it allows for more equality than other hierarchical religions such as the Catholic religion. And I was just wondering, with this new kind of hierarchy that you're talking about, and a lot of the pastors that they seem male, just the few that you've been talking about, I'm wondering where you think women fit in this new kind of patriarchal system the church?
Yeah, there's one of the ladies I didn't mention, Jane Sufil, who looked into the question you just asked. And what she did was actually to study women pastors. Now, most of these powerful, charismatic pastors and leaders of the movements, their wives are also pastors. And people who argue for Pentecostalism providing a more equal opportunity for women often refer to that, the fact that you have women pastors. And there are also single women pastors, not simply attached to, but few, not attached to male pastors. Cases where husbands are not pastors at all, but they are pastors. Or at least you have one in Nigeria, very charismatic, powerful, and one in Ghana. But the important thing to our research, was that, in a closer look at what was happening in the churches, she had particularly examined Ghana. Now she found out, that the position of the pastor missus or the woman pastor kind of depends on the husband. And it's she kind of established that you still have a patron-client relationship going on, and that the woman pastor is still a little less, and that all the honor due to the woman pastor, given to the woman pastor, is actually as a result of her attachment to the husband. And why, what I think gingered her into that territory was the particular pastor she was examining, the lady, divorced the husband. And all of a sudden she lost all, she was forgotten completely. And then she came back. So she decided, okay, if things were fine, there was no, hierarchy of things here, this woman should be able to, start something new and prosper. But she had to come back, and then in speeches, she had to kind of, show reverence and the fact that she was dependent, on. Yeah. So you have these cases going on. But again, that is the complexity, But the fact remains that indeed, when it comes to participation, when it comes to who can talk and who can, lead other people, including men, Pentecostal churches allow for women to do this. It allows them to teach. It allows them, to be leaders. It encourages them to go out and engage in the corporate world. But that's not all the story, and that's my point. That we need to start to look at some of these nuanced aspects of its impact.
I've got a question. Let's see. So you talked about how Pentecostalism is gaining power. It sounds like they're taking on characteristics of multinational corporations, and I'm just wondering and how they're not engaging in political arena. And I was just wondering your opinion on whether should the Third Public engage in politics in Nigeria? Like, what's your position on that? You said that they've got all this power. They're becoming an empire. Should they engage more? And that Islam is in Nigeria better synced in with politics. And I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. Yes, I believe that everybody should engage in politics. How is the question, though? I'm very happy that Muslims engage in politics. Incidentally, let me go back. During the Sharia, the struggle over Sharia, over the introduction of Sharia in Nigeria, and when I said that Christians were mobilized against the state, military governors and government, wanted to take Nigeria into the Organization of Islamic Communities. You find out that now, in general, again, in sub-Saharan Africa, most of the Muslim participation in politics always involved, it has this tendency of calling for theocratic Islamic state. Now that was completely not modern. I mean, it's not in tune, with the pluralist, multi-religious, modernist perspective that people expect, for society that want to democratize. Now, but in the process of that conflict, now, because the Nigerian Christian Pentecostal organizations do not have a political theology, now, they reacted to Muslim pressure by also asking for a Christian state. Now, you find out that that is not progressive. I mean, because it is progressive in the sense that it transcends ethnicity. They want a nation. But this is a nation that is subordinated to religious vision. Now, everybody doesn't belong to Pentecostal group or to Christian. Everybody is not a Muslim. So you can have a nation, that is theocratic and led by Muslim, when they, and enforcing Islam or enforcing Pentecostal biblical law, when you have diversity of religion. So, the point is not whether they should participate. The point is to come up, with structure, ideologies and theories as to how they want to engage with politics. How do they influence policy? How do they, I was reading this story about the Pentecostal party. I would say it's a party in Puerto Rico. And what they did was they stated their cases and they decided to support. Decided they were going to support a particular party. And this party won, PNC or so. After about 5 years, it seems to them that the party was engaging in coming up with policy that did not support what they believed in. And so they switched. And by merely switching, that party lost. So you have at least direct engagement with party politics, but with the understanding that the society is still going to be secular. However, you have views, you have ideas that you want to introduce, maybe based on your morality, at least that will cut across religion. Efficiency, for example, accountability, for example, punctuality and honesty and things like that. But then making use of structures. There has to be structures that allows the strength, the huge strength, within that organization to be able to be transferred to have impact on society. But as this burgeoning body that you have, it's very similar to what, I don't know who was it that talked about, I've forgotten the way they put it. It does despite to the nation, to the public realm. The public realm is now kind of something you don't have to struggle over. There is a bigger fish out there. As somebody dealing with structures that cut across the country. At any rate, you feel excluded, and then you have an alternative organization that involves its own structure, involves its own politics. And one thing is, because of church speak, condemning corruption, there's that righteous feeling, that the church is fulfilling its prophetic mission. Now, since we have condemned it, we have participated in politics. Since we have said this is wrong, it's participation in politics. But in context of Nigeria, that doesn't work. In pluralist context, in places like developed democracies, where power is much more dispersed, where there are interests that has to be taken in consideration before you do things. That might work, because power is not completely concentrated. But in places where you still have very high concentration of power, civil society are still weak, and in many cases, not all civil societies go against government. Many of them simply mediate between government and the people who are actually, are co-opted by the government. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for your questions, and thank you, Dr. Kolapo, for taking us through your really interesting research. And we've come to the end of our formal session, but I wanted to invite you down to share some of the refreshments here out front. We'll put them where they're accessible. And please join me in thanking our speaker for really.
Thank you.